Nairobi. And you are all welcome to Virtually Yours. I can see that our author of the day is here, Ishmael Beah. Welcome very much. Good to see you. And of course, Zukiswa is also here. She's the one who is going to moderate the talk with Ishmael Beah. So at this point, I would like to hand over to Zukiswa.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hello,
Well,
everyone.
Hello, Zukiswa.
Hello, Detlef. Hello, Ishmael. It's good to see you. You and I have been seeing each other virtually every year, it seems.
Hello, everybody.
How are you, Ishmael? How is Sierra Leone?
Sierra Leone is good. It's good. It's the rainy season, so lots of rain, and as it's rightfully called rainy season, so that you can.
I feel cheated. You took photographs of the college, and you didn't you took it in a classroom, and you didn't put anything outside, and I was like, oh my God, like what are you doing, Ishmael? Can you show us this place, because it's so rooted in our imagination?
Well,
you
I
know?
think so. I succeeded. It was a teaser to see what the interest is. So the fact that you want to see more now means that
but you know, all of us, like, we know Forever College, man, that's it. Right, so welcome. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this. To everybody who's joining us, this is Ishmael Beah, fantastic human being, brilliant writer, and I've got some of his works in this house, and you know, UN ambassador for, you know, it's
children affected by conflict. Yes.
Yes,
it's a
absolutely.
mouthful. It's a long title. It's unnecessary.
I know, like, but I mean, the UN does initials very well. Does all these like acronyms very well. So what's the acronym?
I even forget, because really when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter when you're in the field trying to do work. You know, it doesn't matter what your acronym is. I think it's more what your passion is.
The work that you're doing. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Ish, do you have little family with you, and then you can just read us an excerpt for maybe like 3 to 5 minutes? Fantastic.
I was able to bring it with me.
I'm glad you were.
There are many books. I have lots. I have more books than any other possessions in life. So
I have it here with me. So guys, you can also get it on Audible.
Yeah. So all of them are coming in shipping, but I managed to have my one copy along. So.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. So briefly, for those who perhaps may not know about the book, I would just say something very brief about what this novel is about, and then I would read the opening. I started working on Little Family because I had a question that I wanted to answer. And the question was, what does freedom means to a young person in contemporary Africa? How do you define how to be free? With cultural constraints, the constraints of your heritage of culture, but also the input and import of other ideas and ways of living. How do you carve out something for yourselves to be free on your own terms, in your own way? So I decided to use 5 principal characters to sort of explore this idea. And they are young people who have decided to, through circumstances and also deliberately, ostracize themselves from the society they live in and lived in the margins of it, to be able to re-enter it on their own terms to define what freedom means for them. So you have Kudimata, who's the young woman who's the main narrator. Then you have Ndevui, you have Pindi, and you have Namsa and Eliman. And they come from different parts of society. And I really wanted to use these characters because I think often when we talk about intelligence or talent in any society, is usually ascribed to the people who are already well off, who are already doing well. We never consider the people on the margins, on the bottom of society, to actually be as intelligent. And they are actually more intelligent because they're the only ones who can actually navigate the different parts of society, right? They are at the bottom, so they can climb into the lives of those who are doing very well and in and out of it. They also are the ones who can see what the loopholes are in society, what the blind spots are, because every single day of their lives, that's what they need to do to survive. So their intelligence is actually they're economists, they're psychologists, they're you know, they on any given moment they have to make so many decisions to survive. So these five characters are also grappling with history, what that history means for them, and they live in an abandoned airplane, which is a relic of the unnamed country's past. So that's the premise of the story. And so now I would read the opening of it, and a little bit more in, and then we can have the discussion. If you are to walk toward a field that lies at the edge of the small town of Foloya, when the sun is awake in the sky, you will hear the breeze whistling through the grasses, parting the dry and green strands as it makes its way to you. Or maybe you will think it is the rustling of someone hiding under the vast shrubs. At the end of the field, your eyes will light upon the face of a boy among the grasses, peering intently at something. You try to see what it is by following the trail of his gaze, but you see nothing. Hello, you say. The boy does not respond, only narrows his eyelids against the wind. You stare back at his face, in which youth is steeped in something serious and old, in stories you want to know. You try your luck again. Good morning. You do not know what else to say. Caution trumps curiosity. You sense that you should not move closer. He does not respond. In fact, nothing about his demeanor suggests he's even aware of your presence. Your eyes search his face one last time, then you give a sigh. Then you give a sigh and continue on your way. Yet, as you go, you glance back, still hopeful of an answer. And then, just as you have given up and turned your full attention to the road ahead, you hear him whistle. Immediately, several answering whistles fill the air. You become confused. Should you move on ahead or go back to the boy? You are more aware of your fear now, but at the same time, your belly burns with cautious excitement. You do not know which feeling to pursue. While you hesitate, the shrubs begin a vigorous dance. But when you look again to where the boy was sitting, he is gone, without your having heard him leave. You set aside your fear and try all the pathways that are visible to you, but none goes any distance. Each time you find yourself return to where the boy was sitting, the smaller plants stretching to regain themselves in the wake of his human weight. So this is basically how the book opens, and it opens with, this is sort of before the first chapter. And I wanted to deliberately do this because I wanted also to show the agency of the characters, that they would invite you into the story in the way they want. They're going to decide how you come into their lives and what you do in their lives. So I wanted to set this up in that way, because oftentimes I think when folks, Black African folks, are written about, we lose the agency. You know, it's as if we are passive to our own experiences. So I wanted, even in the structure of the book itself, to show that these characters own their story and they would decide what you need to see, hear, and feel on their own terms. And there's nothing you can do about it. So that's where that invitation comes in. And I really wanted that to be very strong at the opening. Yeah.
And I love that about how you wrote this book. It's how you give what would be considered invisible people visibility. And it's something that I've talked to you about before. But one of my favorite characters, who I'm going to come to right now, is Shadrach the Messiah. And you know this. Because I've told you this before, you know, and one of the things that he says is, you know, he says, well, you're celebrating an Independence Day given to you by others, you know, what does it mean? And I wanted to get an idea of, to just talk to you about him a little bit, because he's this guy who's supposed to have been an academic, and then he allegedly went cuckoos and stuff. But I also kind of think that 3/4 of the time, a lot of people who are radically left sometimes tend to they get called mad or crazy or whatever, because they are saying things that are not, there's only like a certain like place of comfort for people. And I kind of felt that about Shadrach the Messiah. Can you tell me a little bit? Can you tell our audience a little bit about him?
Yes, Shadrach the Messiah, it's basically a sort of extremely intelligent fool in the story. And the reason why I wanted to use that is the playfulness of him to sort of speak the truth in a way that people would listen, be uncomfortable, and whether if they are willing to really be intellectually honest, then they can continue to ask themselves the question. If not, then they can cast him aside as just a madman. So I wanted to use a character that kind of plays that, because we see that a lot in our cultures, where if somebody is very radical or extremely intelligent or is able to see deeper into the way society is not functional at all, then you're either considered a madman because you don't want to go with the way things are. We have that very much. People, oh, but that's just how things are. And then we get comfortable with just that, right? So this was a character that's wanted to disrupt all of this. And while I was writing that character, I really had Thomas Sankara in mind, where Thomas Sankara said to be radical requires a kind of madness. To be able to really shift the colonial mindset requires a certain kind of madness to do it, because it's so entrenched in who we are that to challenge it, you need a certain level of madness to be able to do it, So I wanted this character who basically starts to question this idea of independence that most African countries celebrate. How do you celebrate independence that was supposedly given to you by people who decided that you are now free, and they decided when, how that would happen? Is that really freedom? So I asked that question. I also even asked questions about names, where there are certain, African people who have, through our colonial heritage, that have very colonial names, you know. Like so you're thinking to yourself, well, who gave you that name? That name doesn't even fit the landscape you stand upon. If your name is like I don't know what a Lightfoot Boston, for example. I know people whose names are Lightfoot Boston. It's like, okay, like if somebody was to say Lightfoot Boston, I'm walking down the airport, I would not be expecting a Black African person. I would literally hate to say it, but it's the truth. But we've gotten so accustomed to this kind of ways that we don't even realize that how we dress, how we talk, how we feel, even what we eat, it's so much part of how we've been shaped to function for other people. So this book was a way. Shadrach the Messiah is somebody who's trying to challenge people to think about it, saying that don't celebrate Independence Day. You're free every day. Why are you celebrating a day where somebody says you're free? What's the point of that? So.
So the other thing that I really, you set this book obviously in an unnamed country, but I couldn't help thinking that obviously it's somehow Sierra Leone, but it could be like also like any African country. I mean, Independence Day in this country is April 27th, which is Sierra Leonean Independence Day, but also South African Independence Day. But I also really loved how, even though, in my mind, obviously, I think it's Sierra Leone, although I haven't yet come to Sierra Leone. It resonates with the rest of the continent so well. And you do that consistently with your work. You've done that with Radiant of Tomorrow. Remember, I was telling you how that was like, reading it was like I was reading like Marikana. You've done that with A Long Way Gone, obviously, but that's a memoir. But with your novels, at least, you have managed to do that. And I wanted to maybe just find out, like, how do you get it so well? Where it's like, yo, Ish, man. I'm like, wow, man. Like I read your work and I'm like, wow. So how do you manage to like just capture like such a to speak to all of us, to speak to what we want to say.
Well, I think one of
lecturing us.
is interesting. I had a reading some months ago, and there were two participants who were arguing. One of them from Zimbabwe, and another one was from Nigeria. Both of them swore that the little family was set in Nigeria, and the other one thought it was in Zimbabwe. So I said, well, I have really succeeded, because that I wanted to capture that universality of the experiences, because they're very similar. And the reason for that is that I'm very when I write, I'm very faithful to my characters and what they're trying to do. And also, I'm a very keen observer of society, of cultures. And I happen to be fortunate enough to live in different African countries. So for example, during the writing of Little Family, I came to Sierra Leone, spent a lot of time there. I was in Senegal, I was in Nigeria, I lived in Abuja, I went to Lagos and places like that, you know. So, and I was in Mauritania. So I have been to many places that sip into my imagination. And I think that's why when I write, you're able to feel, because I've lived in so many different African countries, and the realities are kind of similar one way or the other. The way the languages may be different, the colonial languages, or even just our languages, tribal languages, but the way people have been
programmed are the same.
Function within a society that's been prescribed for them, and the struggle to find meaning in their lives is kind of the same thing, you know? So when I write, I think that's why it rings through to so many people. And that's what I want to do. Because for me, when I think about generally the African continent, I'm thinking also about who we are, not based on our colonial boundaries, but based on our kingdoms, what we were before. And when that was shattered, how we've always just tried to catch up somehow, because we're not really living the way that's natural to us. Like Sheikh Anta Diop said, it's like we're living in a way that's being given to us that's unnatural in the way we function. So the expression of that is felt in every environment that you're in, and the influx of ideas, you know, from outside doesn't do us any justice, you know. For example, you know, when I was a kid growing up, I grew up also, I think another aspect of it is that I grew up at the bottom of society, you know, like I grew up in a very remote area in Sierra Leone, very poor. I even came to the capital city when I was about 16 years old. It's the first time in my life. So I'd never even left. And even some people in Sierra Leone don't know where my village is to this day. That's how much remote it is, you know? So I already was from the bottom where I believe that my sort of the disruption of my mindset, my intelligence, the way I think happened very late in my life. You know, I think when you grow up in an urban environment, you are very colonized very early on in the way your mannerisms, how you think, right? Like I grew up, for example, the first time I went to a hospital in my life, I was 8 years old. That was the first time I went to a Western hospital. Prior to that, I knew natural medicine, that my grandmother, but I knew story structure, even though I hadn't gone to school. I could tell you an amazing story that will make you sit and not move. So once I started absorbing what was considered knowledge through the Western idea of it, I already saw loopholes in it. I thought to myself, well, that doesn't make any sense, you know? And I thought to myself, well, why is everybody subscribing to that? Am I the only one seeing it? But I'm a village boy. How come I know this and they don't? It's because how you grow up is already told that you're a certain way. Like I remember even coming to the capital city and finding it very strange that you have to buy water to drink. I remember thinking how something was significantly wrong with that. And I thought to myself, well, in my village, you have all sorts of natural sources of water that you can just, you know, I didn't have a wallet, you know, you know. So I was just thinking, I didn't have a wallet. If I wanted coconut water, I didn't have to buy one that was canned. I climbed the coconut tree and picked one for myself, you know. So, but you remember, I'm not a 90-year-old guy, you know, so I'm only 40 years old. So what I'm talking about is that, you know, for me, I think, so when I write, I think I'm able to capture that on the belly that people have felt, whether because they return to the village from time to time, or whether because they don't pay attention to certain aspects of society, they're really aware of it, but it's kind of like, okay, that's how it is, and they move on. And so when I write, I think I'm able to capture it all over because I still understand that basis of who we used to be before. And I think that's what I pulled on, that thread. I'm still pulling on it a little bit. You know?
And hope, because to be a writer is to hope all the time, you know, that things will get better. Your little family consists of Elimane, Kapindi, Kodi, Endevui, and Namsa. And, and I was thinking about the vulnerability of women, which you actually really highlight very beautifully. As far as Kudimata is concerned, because she is, she has this situation where she's on the street, she's street smart, and but even then she's not safe. And she then says it bothered her that she had become so comfortable. Like when she ends up like slashing some guy who's trying to sexually harassing her, and she says it bothered her that she'd become so comfortable with violence. But what choice did she have? And I thought that was so poignant because I had an experience actually. I'm currently in Nairobi now, but I was in Joburg last week, and I was hiking. And when I was walking, there was this man who said, he was like, he just like was very aggressive, and I just walked away. But when I came back, I actually picked up stones and put it in my two hands, and I was thinking, if he comes at me again, I'm gonna use the stones. And I wanted you to maybe like talk about how, despite the fact that women are half the citizens of this continent, of this world, there is also that underlying threat constantly, even in a person like Kudimata, who is not, maybe even more so for Kudimata, who is not, who doesn't have the safety of a normal home. She stays with other people, and she stays in this plane. She is homeless. She doesn't have parents that we know of, although she talks about her mother a lot. Maybe a little bit about something about that. Yeah. And perhaps how you perceive that, how can the men who make up the other half help make it safe for women, like,
Yes.
in your opinion?
I think for me, I think Kudimata was a very challenging character to write for me, but I really wanted to write her because I've observed around the African continent that there is, growing up as a boy, as a man, there is a word, and I think globally also, there's a very masculine word that kind of does not really give room for women or girls to be fully themselves. And I was aware of that, but not as deeply as I became, because I have two girls now, two Black African girls. And I started paying attention and listening more to how people react around them, how men, particularly boys, even begin to determine how they should be from a very young age. And so Kudimata's character really strengthened in me because my eldest daughter, who's now 7, when she was about maybe a year and a half old, we were crossing from Gore into Dakar on a boat. And there were some men who didn't think that I would understand in French. And they were basically talking about her in French. She has long curly hair, and she was a year and a half. And they basically were saying that, she looks like a girl, but how come they don't pierce her ears so we know she's a girl right away? And these were boys and men who were already deciding how a girl should express
a girl should be,
of what a girl could be. And that really tormented me a lot. Prior to that, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have picked up on that, but because I was now a father of a girl, my ears were and eyes were open to all of those things. And I thought to myself, that's how it begins. That audacity, that sort of feeling to think that you can determine how a girl should be. And from there on, there's no safety for the girl. She's a year and a half. They already determined she should be this way, so they would know. What business does a man have to determine how a woman should carry herself or be or talk or anyway? But it comes from that belittling. And now as you grow up in society, even people start to basically see women as just, they wait to be married. That becomes the ambition and things like that. If a woman is too smart, you find a lot of Black African men who will say, oh, I want a strong woman, strong, intelligent woman. They don't know what that means. And they can't handle what that means. They really don't, I began to observe that. In principle, it sounds like a nice idea. But when it comes down to it, it means that you have to check your masculinity so much and then do so much that has been done to us as Black men to believe that we have certain ownership, you know? And so for me, Kudimata's character was a way to deconstruct that, to really show people that no, women, girls don't owe you anything. And actually, they're more intelligent than who you are. A woman only allows you to control her because she wants that to be the case. Otherwise, it would not happen. So in this character, I wanted her to show who she was, her strength, her intelligence. Also, I wanted to take away that idea. People always think, you know, that Black African women are sort of these docile. I didn't grow up around any of them. You know, they're the strongest human beings and the most intelligent people we find, and everything they have to, you know. So I wanted to write a character that also was challenging that, but also envisioning the type of Black African girls I want my daughters to be, how they would challenge society and be themselves unapologetically. They are not going to be beholden to any society standard. They will be who they want to be in their own way. So Kudimata is kind of that character that came out of that imagination that I'm imagining how they should be. But it was difficult for me to write because I had to undo my own masculine POV.
Masculine things, yeah, I can imagine.
You know, so it was actually really good for me. You know, I never thought I knew women, but I thought I had a little bit of understanding. And when I started writing Kudimata, I realized I don't know anything, and anything, absolutely zero. And any man who, if you're willing enough to come from that point of view and really be and learn, you would learn so much about yourself actually, and learn what it means. And for me as a father, this was required for me. If I want to be the father that I want to be for my girls, and I want them to grow up in the world where they assert themselves fully for who they are, I have to undo all of those other things and the perceptions I have. And also I happen to have a fantastic woman in my life.
Yes, I know. She is fantastic. Priscilla is amazing.
who, you know, I mean, you know, so there you have it, you know.
She's fantastic, absolutely. But yeah, you know, speaking of Kodimata though, still, because she also does this enlightening things where, you know, when she goes to the restaurant when she goes to the party, and then she says, and it's something that we all find in a lot of African countries, by the way, where she goes into the restaurant and she says, how come you don't have any food from the country, you know, from this country? You know, they've got all this fancy menu from everywhere else, except, you know, and yeah, so our relationship with our colonial masters as Africans, which is something, and you do it so very subtly, you know. You don't go and bang. She says little comments, or she says, you know, or even you get the part about I think it was Shadrach, the Messiah, who says, we're part of the Commonwealth. The only thing common about it is that some of the countries have all the wealth, which I thought was so beautiful. But you know, you then don't go and bang on it. So our relationship with our colonial masters, as you highlighted in Little Family, you know.
Well, for me, you know, I think as a writer, as a storyteller, I trust the intelligence of my readers. So I don't have to preach to them. I think I can just put out an idea and I know that they would go. I also want the story to become, whoever reads it, for the story to become theirs as well. So if I give everything, then I've exhausted the possibility for them to imagine.
The possibilities of what the imagination, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And how that story means for them, because if somebody reads that, they will look and be like, well, what did I do today that was like that? And the story all of a sudden becomes theirs. And so when they close the book, the story actually continues to live because it's now part of their imagination, how they see things, their reflexes. But if I explain every possible reflex to them, then there's nothing left, you know? So when I write, that's what I bring. And that comes from the oral tradition, where you kind of don't give all the answers in the story. You allow the story to become.
Exactly.
Exactly. So then the story becomes
I love that, because as a writer, it's something that I also have said often, that, you know, everybody's like, so what happened to this? And I'm like, what do you think happened? You know,
exactly.
Your writers are your readers are intelligent enough to know.
Exactly. And when you
have their own mind, actually.
When you believe the intelligence of your readers, they know and they get upset about it. Just like if I'm reading a book and somebody's telling me, oh, well, you have to pull the door right. And I'll be like, yes, I know. You know, I don't need to know I have to pull the door right. You know what I mean? But for this colonial region, it's funny that you brought up that story, because yesterday I was at a place, at a restaurant here. and I was sitting with some friends, and one of my friends started laughing because this moment that is described in Little Family happened, where they brought us a menu, and there's a section of the menu that says African dish of the day. And I'm like, but we're in Africa. Why do we have an African dish section of the day? You know? And I'm like, well, what does that? We're in Sierra Leone. Can you specify what African dish of the day it is that we are having? And then they say, oh, let's go ask the chef. It was very funny. I was sitting there thinking to myself, this is like the book is coming alive when I'm sitting, right? So they go and say, well, we don't have any African dish of the day today. And I'm like, but why? They'd be like, oh, there's nobody to cook it. And I'm like, we are in Africa. And in Sierra Leone.
Let me guess. The chef was even Sierra Leonean.
Yes. No, but guess what I could have? I could have biryani if I wanted.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said to myself, I can have biryani, but I can't have cassava leaf or potato leaves. I'm sitting in my own country,
Wow.
So you find this, but I think people don't pay attention to how this is so, like if I went to Italy, I would not be like, bring me my cassava leaf. Or,
exactly.
Oh, you have an Italian dish section,
Exactly.
and they'd be like, no, we don't have anybody who knows how to cook pasta,
No, but it's also beautiful that that we're talking about food, because it's something that I also found out, like when you brought Little Family, you also don't get into a space where you over explain, which is beautiful. You don't explain like Africanisms or certain things and stuff and everything about the meals or whatever it is. And which is something I absolutely hate, because when I pick up a book, nobody explains to me what pasta is. If I didn't know what pasta is, I will probably go and Google it. And you don't do that. And I like that, because then it's like I'm just being immersed in the experience. And because you have narrated it so well, I get into a space where I'm like, oh, okay, it's probably food because it's in this context, or it's this and this, and it's in this context. So I really thank you for that so much. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was, when Kurimata is in the taxi, and she's talking about she's looking at the country, and they're going into a rich area, but the roads have potholes. And I was thinking, oh my God, any given African city, any given African city. But then she does this commentary where she says, who could love this country? Who could love this country? And then there's the response from the cab driver, or people who are so used to, who haven't been anywhere else, or people who are able to get away and come back. And I thought about that as far as patriotism on the continent is concerned, because, when you get into space, the really rich people who are stealing from us, who are corrupt and so forth and so on, will always accuse anybody who's not actually, who questions of not being patriotic enough, who wants to get things right. Yeah. But part of the reason is because they have their children in schools in the US or in the UK or in France or in Germany. When they get sick, before Corona, they were able to fly out, So I think I wanted to just thank you for that particular social commentary, and maybe just ask you to speak a little bit on that,
Again, I think you're absolutely right. I think people misunderstand love for country or patriotism as something that is not questioned. That if you love something, then everything should always be good about it. You cannot. But actually, if you love something, you actually have to always criticize it so that it can get better. Right? Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, you really truly don't love it, right? Like you can't just be, oh yeah, I love this road, even though it's always flooded. How do we make sure it's not flooded anymore? That actually means that you love it. But So you have that, and the commentary in the book, as Kudimata and the taxi driver, was the character, says that there are two kinds of folks who say that, well, I love the dysfunctionality of that country because you can escape it and come back. But people who are stuck in it question it because they want it to change, you know? And I experienced these things growing up here in Sierra Leone and other places, because as a kid growing up, what I observed was this: when the people who are at the top, who benefit from the dysfunctionality, they are able to live with their families. When something breaks, they pack their family and fly out. And then everybody else who's already at the bottom, at the middles, remains and suffers through it. When it gets better, they return again. So they actually have no emotional response to what it means to suffer because of that dysfunctionality, because they always leave. But then when they return, they're the ones making the decisions again for how the country moves forward, right? So that's why we never get it right. So there's always this discussion that we've had in Sierra Leone many years ago, where people were saying that maybe there should be something in the constitution that says, if you're part of the dysfunctionality, you cannot leave when it falls apart.
You cannot leave, and you have to have your children in that school, in the public school
Exactly.
system. You have
Everybody
to
has
go
to
to the public system and. Not just in Sierra Leone, but all over this bloody continent.
Exactly. Your passports get shut down. You can't go, you stay. Because I think if people really experience this, I don't think they will want it to happen. But the people who make decisions never stay when the dysfunctionality happens. They fly out. Some of them have several passports, so they can use another citizenship to get out, right? Where the rest of the people are just struggling and thinning. And so when the people are angry and they say, oh, these things don't work, you complain too much. Because you live in the reality of it every single moment, because you can't get out.
Bro, the last president of Malawi had was an American citizen.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think
No, but I'm saying, there was a time when he was actually absent from the country because, and they were like, where's the president? And things were happening and he wasn't in the country because he was at home in the US, you know? So when something like that happens, fam, everybody who's in the thing, if you want to ask a question to Ishmael, please go ahead. We have another 20 minutes another 18 minutes to go. So if you please go ahead and ask in the comments, but we keep talking. Go on.
Okay. I actually wanted to get back to something you had said earlier about, the describing pasta and food. For me, these things are so important because I feel that whenever you tell a Black African story, it's almost like you have to explain the otherness of your environment and who you are, whereas it's normal to us. Why? There's no competition for me. So when I write, it's not just about the food I don't describe. I also deliberately try to write about characters whose names you've never heard in literature, so that they become part of how you think. So it's not just the Williams and the Johns that are in stories, but you also have the Kudimata, Eliman, Namsa, Kadiatu, Alhaji. I want those to be in people's psyche when they think about literature, because we don't have, so that the child who picks up that book anywhere on the African continent can see themselves, can see that, there's a book that has my name in it. That power, I think that is very important because we've lost that over the years. And also to come back to years ago, I use a lot of the oral tradition because that's how I grew up. My formative years before I went to school, I learned about the power of stories through that, understanding that stories are medicine, that every time you share a story, you're given a medicine that's strengthening human beings to be able to deal with life. And so when I write, I also think of that, what medicine am I putting in the world? But to really bring that even to make that even more concrete, one of the things that I want to really do when I use that story is also to have people understand that, to get rid of this idea, because people always think that oral tradition story is unreliable because it's not written, even though I'm in the written field. And that came from our colonial heritage that tried to undo the power in stories.
And
erase it. The reason why, for example, in the history of Sierra Leone, before it was Sierra Leone, my people, the tribe that I come from, the Mende, we had a guy called Kisimui who developed how to read and write Mende, but he did not write the stories in it because he believed that Once he would have written those stories, they will be monopolized, they will be used against people. He wanted the stories to be accessible to everybody. So oral tradition is not because people couldn't write it, it's because they didn't want people to take knowledge away from others. If it's oral, only the willing person who wants the wisdom will listen to it and take it. It's not in a library where you have to go pay so that you can have access to it. It belongs to everybody. So there's a democracy in the orality of it, of the storytelling itself. So whenever people say, oh, but oral, it's actually very reliable. It's just because people knew that it can become a power tool. Just like when you go to university, if now there's a book, you can't go to school, you can't read it, you don't have access to it, then you don't have access to that knowledge. Then somebody can use against you. Whereas if I tell you a story orally, you pass it on to anybody who's willing to listen. So that power belongs to everybody. So I really wanted to make that point because people always say, ah, but oral tradition is not reliable. It is very reliable. Absolutely.
Yeah,
How do you write a story? It comes from imagination, right?
No, I think it's very reliable because I also like spent my formative years with my grandmother, in the village. And and she told a lot of stories, she told us a lot of stories. We never wrote it down. And that's part of the reason actually why I write the way I do, because I also get into a space where I'm like, I don't want things to be conclusive. I want to maintain that orality, where nothing is ever very conclusive, because what happens after Cinderella goes to the palace? There is a narrative after that, right? Something happens after that. So there is a comment here from BC. BC is sending us a comment from Ghana. She's a writer from Ghana. And she says, hi, Ishmael. What a wonderful discussion. I especially love what you said about criticizing what you love. The problem extends to those in the diaspora who hold nostalgic views about their home country. Understandable given the racism abroad. Have you experienced anger from diasporans about writing negatively about Sierra Leone?
Yes, I mean, that's a very important question, actually. Hey, Charlie from Ghana, how are you? Anyway, so, I miss Accra. I haven't been in a bit, it's a wonderful place, and there are lots of...
It is. I miss Accra too, Charlie.
Yeah, there's a lot of great writers there, and they have the Lotad, that the library that's there right now. I see their stuff all the time. Can't wait to come soon. Yes, when I started writing for my first book, one of the criticisms that I got was very much that, oh, but why are you writing the bad stories about Sierra Leone? Why are you always writing these things that make us look a certain ways, and it's very interesting because, as we were mentioning earlier, this criticism always comes from people who are already top in society, right? They always comes from them. They are the ones who say, well, why not write good things about Sierra Leone? Is because at the time I had not experienced anything good about Sierra Leone. All my experiences were very much difficult. And this is not to say that Sierra Leone is not a beautiful place, and that's what people miss all the time. No matter what African country, majority of African countries that you will live in, even if you're very well to do, you have power failures. Sometimes you don't have water. That's part of it. So why avoid saying that and build this narrative that's more like La La Land? Yeah, we're so nothing, all the roads function, and then people come and realize that it's actually not like that. There is a dysfunctionality, and it's okay. It's part of our existence. Now we can change it, but we can't say that. Let's just claim our beach is so beautiful. Let's just write about that. I don't want to write stories about how the beach is beautiful, because I know there are people who walk by it whose lives are not beautiful, so they can't even see that beauty. How do I write so that they are able to see that beauty? That's how I come from it more. How do I write about their character, who they are, so that people can understand what it means to exist, even to the point that you can't see the beauty of your own environment? For me, that's more important than talking about a guy sitting at the beach, drinking Star beer and walking around all day. I don't want that story. You want that story? Read a travel magazine. Yeah. Exactly. I write literature, yeah? You want that story? So that's always been my response. is that we have to be willing to talk about the realities of the place. And within that reality is beautiful. You've read my books. Even when I talk about these difficult things, there's beauty in that.
No, absolutely.
You know?
I mean, that's just it also, Ishmael, because you give your Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze a bit. Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay, all right. So what I was saying is that's actually also one of the things that I really love about what you do, because even as you criticize, you give your characters enough agency that there's also the beauty. They you know, so they're not one-dimensional, and I appreciate that. I never feel, you know, even though I see the hardships and the problem, I never feel like you're writing poverty porn. You know, I don't feel like, you know, your characters are so well-rounded. They have, you know, they're multi-dimensional, and it's just, to me, it's beautiful, and it's how I want to have the story of this continent, of the world, told, you know, without you know, without any like sanitizing stuff, although we should be sanitizing because corona, but without sanitizing stuff, but also without but also with beauty, and with agency, always. And your characters, because they're also like from this, you know, from this continent, and always consistently, they have this agency that's often not given to poor people, you know, even if they might be poor. And I appreciate that. TJ Benson, writer from Nigeria, says
Nigeria. Benson. I know Mr. Benson.
He says, I know you have lived across some African cities, and I'm curious, is travel crucial to your creative process? This is because TJ is trying to get somebody to buy him a ticket to Accra.
TJ, as the thing, Zukiswa is going to buy you the tickets. That's what she said. Don't worry.
I'm buying nobody a ticket. I want a ticket to Accra myself.
Yeah, I think, you know, I've always been a strong believer that, you know, yes, we all have imaginative capacities, but I think your imagination is even sharpened and deepened if you allow yourself to access the world more, particularly the African continent. I think over the years, a lot of us young Africans were kind of smitten by the idea of traveling abroad, elsewhere, and forgetting that there's such richness within our own continent itself, you know? So for me then, some years ago, you know, because of my wife also, we decided that, well, why go to Italy or Spain or Ibiza, where we can go to Mozambique, or where we can go to Namibia, or where we can, because there's not even equivalent, there's better, where you can go and your imagination will just blow up completely and you have more to write about. So for every writer who has a means, I say, expose yourself to the world, to society, particularly to our continent. And even if you can't travel outside of where you are, venture into other parts of the cities that you live in to see how people, and that brings me back to what you were saying, Zukiswa, which was a really amazing point about the multidimensionality of characters. Often when people are written, it's almost, and that's why sometimes people are short-sighted, think that you're only talking about the bad things, because they think if somebody is poor and you write about them, then you're writing about poverty. That is actually not true. If somebody's poor, you write about them, you're writing about what it means to be poor, but also the intelligence and the beauty, even in that. So for example, when you look at Little Family, you see that people who are worse off in society are having political discussions in the evening when they're only having a loaf of bread and they're listening to the radio. They're in tune with politics. They're more so, but nobody ever hears that. You know, nobody
listens. Well, the chattering classes don't listen really, you know. Exactly. I mean, and perhaps that's where like Elimani comes so importantly as a character, because here's a child who had it all at some point in time, and then he was a Frederick before, you know. And then now he is living in this whatever, and he's able then to see and to gauge, even as he's engaging with somebody who probably can give him a job, you know, the mannerisms that he needs to do, how he needs to act like he doesn't really care and stuff and everything.
Yeah, for example, you know, I lived in Central African Republic, you know, in Bangui, you know, during the height of the war. Some years ago.
There's some people who has been to Central African Republic. You know, we've had this long debate about, are there any people in Central African Republic?
Yes, there are lots of. You see, you guys now. That's why you need to travel based on TJ's question, eh? There is a Central African Republic, you know. So there is. Yeah, it's an interesting country, but I live there.
And guys. And you know, I ask this question every year. And the last time I asked this question, the next thing that happened is somebody was like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm actually in Central African Republic. I'm a journalist." And I was like, "Yes, but are you white? Are you French?" And then they're like, "No, I'm actually from here." And then the next thing is the ambassador of from Central African Republic to South Africa actually sent me a message, and he was like, "When would you like to visit?"
You should, you know. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. Yeah, Central. So I lived there, but you know, my wife was working there for the United Nations, so I lived there quite a bit. And during the day, you know, on the streets in Bangui, it's like, you know, people are struggling even to get in a taxi. They're fighting. All of these things is happening. But then in the evening, when all of that calmed down, you go to the center of the city. You see these amazing young people that are creatives, that are discussing ideas, talking about what they will do tomorrow, that have little art projects, somebody's drawing, but they only had a bread to eat today. But that story never makes it out because people don't see that. They only see that struggle during the day. And then while that's happening, they're discussing politics. They're hopeful. They want their country to be perceived differently, all of that. And I was there, and then I left from there and I went to South Africa. I went to Pretoria and I went to Johannesburg, and I met other young people who completely don't even know there was a Central African Republic that existed next door to them. So you see what I'm talking about, you know, like we're just talking about. So for me, when I write, these are the moments I want to show the intelligence. Like a little family, you have them having that discussion about, and they even use the word to corrupt. That whole discussion about how come is it
that— I love the way you use that word in the book. What?
You know, no, because I wanted to I always, when I read, I'm always going at the underbelly, but also the surface. They were having this discussion in the little family about, so how come is it that when our politicians steal something, they're just corrupt, you know, but when an ordinary person who is struggling, who goes to the market and steals a loaf of bread, or maybe, and he's considered a thief.
They need it.
So they need it, and he's considered a thief. So they decided, which is also something that's very unique about any contemporary African city, language is alive and it changes. New slangs come in. For example, if I haven't been in Sierra Leone for maybe 3-4 months and I return, I have to learn the new, you know, expressions that have been added to Creole, which is one of our lingua francas, you know, because it's always evolving. So they decided, listen, we're gonna now, when somebody takes something, we're not gonna say they're a thief anymore, we're just gonna say, hey, you corrupted it. You know, I corrupted a watch today, you know, I corrupted, you know. So you see how the story, because also I think when I write, also what I really want to do in my writing, also to show that every human being in society, no matter where you are, you're not a bystander to history. You are part of it. Your existence is part of that history, of that place, of that culture. But often we think we are here and there's history here, you know? So when I write, I really want to bring people in, because all of this thinking, all of these behaviors are the ones that culminate to how that history of that country becomes, how the mentality, the functionality, the behavior of that country. So when we write about all those people who just drive their nice cars and things like that, and also I show the madness and the ridiculousness. There's a scene where there's a Rolls Royce going by, you know, the roads are so, you know, there's so many potholes that the driver, every time his nice Rolls Royce goes into there, he pulls his head out and grumbles, you know, because it's like, he knows the rims are gonna get bent. He'll be like, well, why didn't you make the road before you went and bought a Rolls Royce?
All right. Before you bought a Rolls Royce. Ishmael, it's always such a delight talking to you, but it's looks like we're almost time up, so we need to do this. And our 5 lucky winners before we start. Okay, right. Is Uchenna in the house? Uchenna Emalipe? Uchenna going once?
I don't think so. There are 5 people, they joined late. They are not on the list. And
Okay, no, but Uchenna was on the list.
I don't think so, yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry, so. Uchenna. I'm gonna tag you on Facebook and tell you how you missed winning. All right. Liz Jordan?
Nope, she's not.
Okay, all right.
BC wants one from somebody who is not around.
Ndegwa is not here, I don't think.
No, Dekwa is not here today.
Ndegwa is not here today. Shame on him. And he was lucky today.
Is there a ticket in the winning? Maybe TJ will win the ticket, no?
Monya Rinda. More.
Sure.
Nope. More is not here? Okay, next. No, TJ, we just want to put him on a bus. I didn't even, BC, you won.
Wow.
BC, you're the first winner today.
Yeah, she says yay.
Here.
She's there. She says yay.
Okay. All right. Jay, you can't win if you haven't been picked. Helen Vale?
No, she's not here today.
Okay, Helen
There's already 2 Namibians that are not there.
All righty. Laimi Shimanga. That sounds like a Namibian too, Detlef. I guess they're not here.
There are some Namibians live, but I don't know that name.
Okay. Paulina Hamkwaya.
No, my colleague. She's
yes, another Namibian.
When are we up to Namibia to visit Remy?
I know, right? We should totally go to Namibia. Rujeko, is Rujeko in the house? Rujeko, you've been winning a lot lately.
I have. Yes, I'm in the house. I really look forward to reading Ishmael's work. I really enjoyed the discussion. Yeah.
While I'm waiting for it to send it to you, you can actually catch it on Audible if you have Audible. But yeah, okay. It's a beautiful read.
Awesome. Thank
our
you.
Next win, Anne Gill, going once.
I'll take 2.
BC, don't be.
I'm greedy. What can I say? I love Ishmael's work.
Thank you.
Randomly.
I'll sell it for mucho money.
Alison Smith.
Yes, hello. I'm here.
Alison, congratulations. You are a winner.
Thank you.
Winner. We've got 2 more wins to go.
Is that his brand new book?
Yes. Oh. Yes, that's his brand new book, Little Family. Mpo Mabala, Mpo, going once, going twice.
So.
Sold to BC.
Did I hear my name or was I dreaming?
No, you didn't hear. You did hear your name, Helen. You were dreaming. Ashley Abrahams Fitzgerald. Ashley
Is there?
Abrahams
She's there.
Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Ashley, congratulations, you're our fourth winner.
Yay, that's amazing. Thank you so
Send you
much.
an email just to get your address, and as soon as I get the books from Ishmael's publisher, I will send them.
Thank you.
Deshaun Obok. Deshaun.
Nope, not here.
No,
Not in the
not
house.
Deshaun.
Is he still here?
Okay. Lily Mora. Lily Mora. There's a Kenyan.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
Yay, Lily.
Well, Kenya.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have Detlef, we don't have virtually yours next month, right? Because we're on holiday.
Sorry,
right?
Your sound was you was just stucking. I mean, technical wise, I mean.
No, I said we don't have virtually yours next month, right? Because in August, and we'll come back in September.
Do we? So I'm
No.
sorry. We should.
Are you not on holiday in August?
No, we are in Namibia. We don't have holiday in August. We have holiday in December.
In Namibia, what you can do is you can go to Exclusive Books and you can order a copy, and they will get it, and they'll call you when it's come through. So go to Exclusive Books and order a copy in Namibia. In Kenya, if you order some copies from Prestige Books, they should be able to get them to you. Same thing with South Africa. You know, and we're hoping if you in Nigeria, if you go to Wida Books, you should be able to get some copies. In Ghana, we'll make a plan. I'm sure that there's some bookshops that have copies. But,
yeah, Vidya Books.
Vidya Books should have some copies, but Bissy, also Nana, if we ask him to order, you should have some.
Book Nook Bookstore. Book Nook Bookstore. They own
exactly.
bookstore.
But Zukiswa, I would like to thank you for the decoration behind. I see you have all the books from virtually yours, starting from Nick Longo.
I have titles from the last writers. And of course, because I put in this, I also even put myself so that people don't forget that I'm also a writer.
And I also would like to let you know that we had registration, and I think a lot of the countries, they were also live. We had now this time from Uganda, from Kampala. We had listeners from Ghana, from half of the people from Kenya, from Namibia, even some people they were online. And from South Africa, from Nigeria, even 2 people from Nigeria, from the US, from UK, from Portugal, and nobody from Sierra Leone.
But me, I mean, Sierra Leone.
Actually,
you forgot the VIP.
Yeah, in Freetown.
Yeah.
Or the MIP, most important person.
Yeah. So maybe I can hand over to Elizabeth for the closing words.
Okay. Before we do that, Elizabeth, before we hand over to you, I also just wanted to let everybody know. So Detlef, we're on in August, because if we're on in August, my plan is to have Nana Kweti as our next person. Nana Kweti from Cameroon. And then in October, we are looking forward to having a Namibian. Yes, we're going to have a Namibian. We're going to have Remy Ngamije in September. And then coming up, guys, this is for you guys who are in this discussion. We and you are the first people to know it beyond Detlef and Elizabeth and people here. We're gonna have a virtually yours Lit Fest in November.
Yes.
So look out for that for 4 days.
Nice.
Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Yeah, and I look forward to the festival. I can't wait, and I'm excited to see all these wonderful people, including my wonderful friends from Nairobi. Thank you for coming. Most of the people that you're seeing from Nairobi are from another literary forum that we call the Amka Literature Forum. And so once I can see that they have come to represent us, Mudhoni Wagishuru usually moderates that particular forum. Great to see you here. It's good that the virtual world has managed to bring all of us together, sitting from different corners of the globe, and we're all here discussing this wonderful work by Ishmael Beah. Ishmael, I was listening to you discussing, and at some places I felt I mean I could say I stand accused of some of the crimes that we spoke about. For instance, when we say that you leave a place and you don't fully live in a particular place, and you come back, you're excited to be there, and you cannot understand why the people who are always there are not grateful for the beautiful things that you're nostalgic about, because you miss them simply because you don't live there. And for me, it's not about a different country. I live in the same country that I was born, but I grew up in the village and now I live in the city, and I am so nostalgic about the up country. And when I go back and I find everybody complaining, and I'm wondering, you guys don't know what you have. But the truth is that I can see it because I have been removed from it most of the time. So I will change my attitude from now on. I see the point. So as we close down, yes, Detlef has told us about the different locations represented, but it would be nice if we were able to place a name to a location. If you could just type into the chat where you're from, it would be awesome to know who is from where. And also, thank you for coming, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. But we shall not let you go without playing one more song from Nairobi. And Detlef is going to do that for us, because as you can see today, I'm attending the meeting in transit. So I was supposed to have played the song, but Detlef will do that for us. So kindly do play the song for us as we say where we are from. Thanks again, Detlef. Awesome. So thank you very much for attending our meeting today, including those who only managed to enter towards the end. It's never too late to attend virtually yours. So
Elizabeth,
until next time, yes.
For
yes,
those
yes.
they just joined in too late, I saw it, or even they missed some of the events. I just can also put in the chat our playlist from Virtually Yours from 1 to 7, so you can watch all the other recordings so far.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have all recordings of Virtually Yours, which is basically a global literature meeting. I mean, it's virtual, so it's really everywhere. So I hope to see you again it should be next month. What date, Detlef? Zukiswa?
The 14th of August.
The 14th of August, the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
I hate to say goodbye.
Cheers. Thank you from everyone.
Ciao, cheers.
Thank you, Zuki.
Au revoir.
Chatting with you.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for the discussion. Beautiful. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Awesome discussion.
Very.